Hey y'all, Dylan here with the Cuesta Pride podcast. Today we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day by doing a special on Ireland. Today we're going to be talking about both the Republic of Ireland, technically just Ireland, and Northern Ireland. We need to go over a wee bit about century and a half, or century 20 years of history, because it basically is the origin and shaping of the modern country. So we'll be looking about the Free State, but a few important events and getting into it. Ireland's been inhabited for thousands of years. It's been Christian for well over a millennium, but historically its neighbor to the east has always wanted it, and this came about in varying degrees, especially with the Anglo-Normans, which controlling decent chunks of the island, where it really comes basically Anglo-Normans and English throne is really when you start seeing real tight control of the island. And this comes full circle in 1541 with Henry VIII being crowned the King of Ireland and beginning the official domination of the Emerald Isle for centuries. Going farther, the Ulster Plantation system is essentially the origin of plantation systems used heavily in English colonies and subsequent British. This occurred mainly in Northern Ireland, or Ulster more accurately, where land was forcibly ceded by Irish chieftains and just straight up stolen, and was given to Scottish and English Protestants, predominantly to have poor Irish Catholic tenant farmers and indentured servants work it. At this point, Ireland is being ruled essentially like a colony. Basically, think Jamaica and Newfoundland. At this point, too, all constituent countries of the United Kingdom are ruled directly from London. I mean, modern stuff has changed, but at this time, everything was being ruled from London. The next biggest, and arguably one of the most important points in Irish history, is the Great Famine, or Potato Famine. This caused, 1 million deaths, lost, an eighth of the population from deaths or starvation, and basically led to an overall quarter reduction in the population of Ireland. In 1841, there were about 8.5, closer to 9 million Irish. Go a few years, about a decade in the future, and you have, half, four. Basically, a factor in also doing that was creating essentially an Irish diaspora, and basically making more Irish people in America, Australia. Basically, they predominantly went to the U.S. and other British possessions. Of course, Irish are a hated type of immigrant at this time, and they have a rough time. Anyone who's learned American history or Irish knows this is a not welcome people. The next biggest things that happen are attempts to make home rule in 1886, but this is shot down in Parliament and is looked at as very suspicious and just, they don't want to give the Irish home rule. The next attempt was in 1893, but this was also, I believe, vetoed by the House of Lords. The next biggest thing actually was happening in 1914, and that was actually passed to give the Ireland home rule, but Britain was mired in World War I at the moment, and the Great War was draining all of Britain's attention elsewhere and didn't usually focus on it. After this, you have, after the ending of the Great War, you have Britain then looking at Ireland, and actually I should take that back. An important point as well is the Easter Rising, which was carried out by the Irish Republican Brotherhood. It did not go well, and was essentially them seizing key government buildings in Dublin. It also just goes to show Britain needs to start making real changes in Ireland if they want to try keeping it. But it also is important in 1919 when the first unicameral, essentially Irish Revolutionary Parliament met, trying to make an Irish state. Eventually you have the creation of the Irish Free State via the Anglo-Irish Treaty, where essentially Irish officials met with British officials and made Ireland the Irish Free State, and that was in 1921. And what this meant is that Ireland would become a self-governing dominion within the British Empire, akin to the Union of South Africa or British North America, Canada. This was a big win for the most part, and actually created home rule, which hasn't existed quite literally for centuries on the island, but there's some who are not pleased with it and want to get a more quite fully independent nation. There's essentially something called the Irish Civil War that occurs for about a year. This is like a guerrilla kind of war. It's not leading to too much. The next modern milestone occurs in 1937 when the Constitution of Ireland is created and asserts that Ireland is a sovereign independent nation, and also is just called Ireland, not the Republic of Ireland. Basically, as this continues, Britain is dealing with the loss of Singapore, other important possessions in the Pacific to the Japanese, as well as the Third Reich conquering huge swaths of Europe. They're just utterly preoccupied and are not able to handle Ireland whatsoever, so in part it allows Ireland to start establishing more international, essentially acceptance, like you see it recognized. That's the word I'm thinking of. Ireland is officially neutral during World War II, but it does receive some bombings by the Germans. Mostly this is screwing up and hitting parts of Ireland, but it does occur. After the war in 1949, Britain abolishes any role of the British monarch in the Republic and asserts it's a fully independent nation. Of course, Britain is in no shape to try to retake Ireland. It's utterly destroyed. The important parts of its empire are gone. Then in 1955, Ireland joins the United Nations, and another important little touchstone to step on is Jack Kennedy's visit to Ireland. Huge deal. If you look up a video of that, that's big. Really comes full circle in the story of Irish immigration to the United States, achieving the highest possible position. But in more recent years, Ireland has had some economic problems, but has become more of a tech center, actually, especially in the Dublin area. But it's not bad. The other important point to touch on that literally plays into all of this, plays into LGBTQ civil rights issues and is happening during it, is the Troubles. And that is essentially a 3-decade-long conflict where you see a lot of terrorism, car bombings by the Irish Republican Army, IRA, as well as other groups, and this mainly occurs in Northern Ireland, especially Belfast, Derry, as well as Britain, the mainland, but this is also categorized as a soft war. It's essentially like a guerrilla kind of conflict. It has that feel to it when you study it, but obviously we're not going deep into it because this is more focusing on LGBTQ rights, which we're going to be getting to momentarily. But the most important outcome, one of the most important, is the Belfast Agreement or Good Friday Agreement, which legally is considered the end of the Troubles in 98, and also creates it legally possible for Northern Ireland to become part of Ireland via referendum, which is seeming more and more likely with political failures in the UK, as well as displeasement with Brexit. But as I said, in more recent years, Dublin has gotten a lot better. Alright, now that we're done with that wee history lesson, we're going to get into more of the LGBTQ issues on the Emerald Isle. Now, an important thing to remember, too, being gay was illegal in Ireland until 93, and Northern Ireland till, 82. And this isn't just like a law on the books. What was it, between 62 and 72, there were 455 convictions of this. It's not one of those laws that's just on the books. It's a real thing, and it's something that, it's a common law throughout any former British colony, especially a lot of the places we focus on here and in the Caribbean, but this was legally convicting people. And a common practice, too, sadly, is kicking LGBTQ kids out of the houses. This was especially common in essentially rural Ireland, most of Ireland at this point. But a big and really noticeable change occurs in the late 90s and early 2000s with the Ireland's Equal Employment Act and the subsequent Equal Status Act in 2000, which makes it illegal to discriminate against LGBTQ plus people on the basis, makes it illegal to discriminate with jobs on the basis of sexual orientation. Of course, this happens a bit, part of it, but it gives people a legal option to fight this, and this is an important marker in creating LGBTQ civil rights in Ireland. Another important thing we do need to talk about is the role of religion. The main thing you probably think of when you hear Ireland is Catholic. I mean, everyone thinks that, and Ireland very much so is a Catholic country. A good chunk of it is, at least, and Catholicism plays a very special role in Ireland. It's tied to nationalism for the Republic, standing against the control of London. It has a very special meaning in it, and the island became Christianized by the St.Patrick, who was originally a slave there, and came back to convert the pagan Celtic people. So the other sects on the island predominantly are Presbyterian and Anglican, and those are mainly in Northern Ireland, and even parts of that. Northern Ireland's got a decent Catholic population, especially in Derry and Belfast. But as I was saying, religion has taken a decrease in the role of Irish politics. It definitely still has a place in it, because it's also very much so tied to nationalism for the country, support of the Republic. But view-wise, the religion has been less, it's decreased its effect on LGBTQ stuff, but it is still there. Another big thing in both parts of the island is conversion therapy, and as of 2021, it is legal. And this is also, there are pending cases in Northern Ireland, but as of 2021, it is legal in Ireland. There have been effects to outlaw it, but there's been no truly tangible outcome. And this is something that just harms so many people. I mean, stateside, like stories, books like Boy Erase help shed light on the horrors of this and the psychological effects, how it harms young people. It's something that is very real and very much so hurts people. But there have been, as I said, attempts to outlaw it. There's a pending case for Northern Ireland. A likely outcome with actually getting rid of it is that it'll become illegal or it'll be blocked in some counties, and others it'll be legal, much like the U.S. And I mean, here in California, if I recall correctly, it had to be classified as fraud. That's how they actually were able to block it from happening. But it's something that is legal on both parts of the island still, and it harms a lot of people. Another issue too is bullying. I mean, bullying in general is nothing new. It occurs constantly. It's something that's just very common for LGBTQ plus people literally throughout the globe. And essentially, Ireland is no different. In the past, acting anything gay would probably get the shit beaten out of you, or something like that, or being socially ostracized. Things have changed, but it's still one of those, it has problems. And it's also important to remember culturally, most people growing up that were in the 90s, it was still illegal to be gay till 93 in Ireland. And as I said before, people were getting convicted for this. It was a real law. It was being enforced. But the bullying has really decreased from what it was. Ireland's really transitioned in more recent years from something that was more, almost think like for Americans, think rural Midwestern with a wee bit of metropolitan in the major cities. But it has really shifted, and there have been positive changes. And one of the most important things to actually talk about, and something I know a decent amount, is the legalization of same-sex marriage in Ireland. This actually occurred November 26th, 2015, when it became legal. It was carried out by referendum, and this momentous change occurred for a lot of, what do you call it, like, oh my gosh, campaigning. That's what I'm thinking of. Look up pictures, you're going to see signs saying, vote yes, vote no, all over the island. This was something obviously Irish people were supporting, as well as people all over the globe that support LGBTQ plus rights. And this is a huge, I remember seeing this news, this is a momentous event in Irish history, because only 93 it was illegal to be gay. and now it's legalizing gay marriage. But in Northern Ireland, it occurred, January 20th, 2020, and this was a mixture of political back and forth, yes and no. It was a strange thing. It was vetoed before in the parliament. It was a strange thing. There was obviously a lot of like campaigning for it and against, but part of the reason it actually came to be is bureaucracy and timing out. Literally a little timing out, but that actually allowed it to be able to get passed, and it became into law in 2020, last year. And that actually made it, whole island, gay marriage is legal, and that was a huge event. I remember seeing that. I was like, wow, I was not thinking a decade ago, you do not think of Ireland for that. But Ireland has really shifted in more recent years. It's become a far more accepting and tolerant place. It's just, it's really made positive strides in the last few decades. All right, thank you all for listening. Please leave any comments below. That's it.